still remember the sound of it, the faint creak of our bed, my bed, echoing through the hallway as I carried a tray of tea in my hands. It was early, the kind of morning when the sun had just begun to stretch its golden fingers through the blinds. For a brief moment, I thought Jason, my husband of 26 years, had woken early. I thought he was restless, but when I pushed open that bedroom door, my world split apart like fragile glass. There they were. Jason, my husband, the man who once swore he would love me until his last breath, wrapped around Valerie, a woman I had only seen once before, but one I would never forget. Their laughter was sharp, cruel, and it died instantly when they saw me standing there. My tea tray crashed to the floor, spilling dark liquid across the carpet, as silence choked the air. Jason leapt up, stammering excuses, but Valerie simply smirked, as if she belonged there, in my sheets, on my pillows, in the sacred space of my home. And at that moment, I knew this was not just betrayal. This was war. But what neither of them knew, standing there half-dressed in my bedroom, was that my revenge would not only shatter their fragile little world, it would expose a truth that would leave them both begging for mercy. Before I continue, I want to pause for just a moment. I want to thank every single one of you listening today. To all my new and returning viewers, your presence means the world to me. This channel is my voice, my therapy, and my way of reaching hearts all over the world. If you have not already, please do subscribe right now, because that little red button is the fuel and energy that keeps stories like mine alive. And do not forget, I want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, your emotions, your own stories in the comments below. Because together, we create more than just stories. We create a family. Now, let me take you back into my story. My name is Anita, and I'm 50 years old. I live in Massachusetts, in a house that once felt like a sanctuary of love. Jason, my husband, is 52. We met when I was in my 20s, bright-eyed and hopeful, carrying nothing but ambition and faith in love. Jason was charming, the kind of man who knew how to make a woman laugh until her ribs ached. For years, I gave everything to our marriage. I gave up opportunities, put aside my dreams, and stood by his side through every storm. I thought we were building something sacred. I thought we were building a family that would last forever. But slowly, Jason began to change. He stayed later at work, his cologne lingered on shirts that were not mine, and his touch grew colder, more distant, as though my skin repelled him. I wanted to believe it was stress. I wanted to believe it was age, but deep down, I knew. My heart knew before my eyes ever confirmed it. That morning when I found them, Jason tried to paint it as a mistake, a lapse in judgment. He begged, he cried, but what broke me was not his pleading, it was Valerie. She stared at me with the smugness of someone who believed she had won. As though all my years of sacrifice, of loyalty, of love were nothing compared to her youth and audacity. And at that moment, I knew this was not just betrayal. This was war. But what neither of them knew, standing there half-dressed in my bedroom, was that my revenge would not only shatter their fragile little world, it would expose a truth that would leave them both begging for mercy. What Jason and Valerie never expected was that their betrayal was not the first time I had been stabbed in the back, and the last person they imagined had a hand in this betrayal was someone much closer than either of them realized.
Silence is a heavy thing. People often believe that words cut the deepest, but it is silence that leaves wounds that never quite heal. After that morning, I did not scream, I did not throw him out, and I did not demand explanations. Instead, I became a shadow in my own home. Jason walked around me as though he was walking through fire, terrified of when I would finally explode. Valerie, on the other hand, thought she had already won. Jason started sleeping in the guest room, his excuses thin and his apologies even thinner. He said things like, "It was a mistake. I did not mean it. You are the only one I love." But how do you convince a woman of love when she has already seen you share her bed with another? His words were dust in the wind. What Jason did not realize was that my silence was not weakness, it was strategy. Because silence gave me the chance to watch, to observe, to listen to the whispers he tried so hard to hide. I began to notice patterns. Jason's phone, once left carelessly on the counter, was now glued to his hand. His laughter in the middle of the night, the sudden showers he would take after late-night business meetings. I did not need evidence to know he was still seeing her. What I needed was patience. Valerie, oh, Valerie. She was younger than me by at least 15 years. She worked as an events planner in Boston. I remembered her because Jason had once introduced her at a company party. At the time, she had been polite, sweet even, with a smile that carried no malice. But behind that smile, I now saw ambition. She was not just a mistress, she was a climber. She wanted my husband, my home, my life. It was almost laughable. She thought Jason would give her everything. She had no idea that the man she was holding on to was a coward, a liar, and soon, a man who would have nothing left to give. For weeks, I said nothing. I cooked his meals. I maintained the house. I carried on with life as though nothing had shattered me. But behind that mask, I was gathering. I was gathering receipts, photographs, and pieces of evidence. I created a folder on my computer, locked under a password only I knew. Every message, every phone call, every late-night meeting, it all went into that folder. And with every click, every saved screenshot, I felt myself growing stronger. There was one night that stood out to me, though. Jason came home late, smelling of Valerie's perfume. It was floral, cheap, and it lingered in the air like poison. I sat across from him at the dinner table, silent. He avoided my eyes, stabbing at his food as though it were his enemy. And when I finally lifted my head to look at him, he froze. That was when I said it. Soft, calm, but sharp enough to slice through his skin. I know everything, Jason. Every single thing. He dropped his fork, his face pale, his lips trembling. But I did not shout. I stood up, carried my plate to the sink, and left him sitting there with his guilt. Because I wanted him to feel it. I wanted him to drown in it. But here is where the story takes its first real twist. Because in my search for evidence, I stumbled on something I had not expected. Something that made my hand shake and my heart pound. It was an email. A simple email tucked away in Jason's inbox between work memos and junk mail. But the name in that email stopped me cold. Valerie. Not just Valerie, but Valerie speaking about me. Words that cut deeper than any blade. She wrote to Jason mocking me, talking about how pathetic I was, how I was too old to keep a man like him satisfied, how she could give him everything I never could. But it was the last line that left me trembling. Do not worry about Anita. I already know how to handle her. She has no idea who I really am. Who I really am? Those words spun in my mind like a curse. Who was she really? And why did she sound as though she knew something I did not? My silence turned heavier that night, not because of Jason, but because I realized that Valerie's betrayal was not just about desire. It was personal. I began to dig deeper. Her name, her history, her connections. I spent hours on my computer, hours on phone calls, piecing together the puzzle, and what I discovered made my blood run cold. Valerie was not just some random woman Jason had fallen into bed with. She was connected to me, to my past, to a chapter of my life I had long buried. And when the truth finally came to me, when I realized exactly who she was, I nearly dropped to my knees.
Valerie was not a stranger at all. She was someone I had once trusted, someone who had been part of my life years ago, and now she had returned, not by chance, but with purpose. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when I finally pieced it together. My hands trembled as I sat at my computer, staring at the old records I had pulled up. Records I thought I would never need to see again. Valerie was not just some random woman who crossed Jason's path. She was Valerie Hart, the daughter of a woman I once called my best friend. Decades ago, before Jason and I had even married, there was a woman named Caroline Hart. Caroline and I were inseparable. We shared secrets. We laughed. We dreamed together. But that friendship ended in flames when she betrayed me in a way I swore I would never forgive. Caroline had stolen from me, not money, but something far worse. She had stolen my trust, my faith in women as sisters. And after that, she disappeared from my life forever. Now, standing in front of me, wrapped around my husband, was her daughter, Valerie. This was not an accident. This was not chance. This was blood-deep revenge, threaded from a grudge I thought had died long ago. Jason had no idea. He thought Valerie was just some young woman who stroked his ego and filled the emptiness of his fading charm. He did not know that she was carefully weaving herself into our lives like a spider into a web. But I knew. I knew it from the moment I saw her name written in that email. I began to notice things I had once ignored. The way Valerie spoke about me with contempt, the way she smirked whenever Jason mentioned my name, the way she carried herself as if she was not just replacing me, but erasing me. And suddenly, the betrayal was not just about Jason. It was about Caroline. It was about a generational wound, passed from mother to daughter, now playing out in my home. But here is where my silence transformed into strategy. If Valerie wanted to destroy me, she underestimated who I was. She thought I was just a 50-year-old woman, tired and broken. But what she did not know was that I had been broken before. And when you have already survived fire, you are not afraid of getting burned again. I started moving quietly, like a chess player who already knew how the game would end. I gathered every proof of their affair. I traced Valerie's finances, her work contracts, and even her social media. I discovered Jason had been funneling money to her, gifts, rent, expensive trips, all of it hidden under the guise of business expenses. And the deeper I dug, the darker it became. Jason was not only betraying me emotionally, he was betraying me financially, risking the very security I had built with him over decades. Our savings, our investments, pieces of it had already found their way into Valerie's hands. That was when I decided enough was enough. I could have divorced him quietly. I could have exposed them with a single email to his colleagues or a single post on social media, but that would have been too easy. Too merciful. No, I wanted them to feel what I had felt. I wanted them to bleed the way I had bled. So I started planting seeds, subtle, invisible seeds that neither Jason nor Valerie noticed. I spoke sweetly to Jason, pretending to forgive him, pretending to move on. He relaxed, thinking my silence meant surrender. Valerie grew bolder, showing up at places she knew I would see her, flaunting her stolen prize. All the while, I smiled, and I waited. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. One evening, Jason invited Valerie into our home again, not into our bedroom this time, but into the living room. He had the audacity to pour her wine in front of me as though I was the intruder and not her. I sat across from them, silent, watching as Valerie leaned into him, whispering in his ear. Her eyes never left mine. It was a silent challenge, a declaration that she had already won. But then I leaned forward, my voice calm, almost tender. "Tell me, Valerie, does your mother know you are here? Caroline Hart. Does she know you are in my house with my husband?" The smirk fell from her face. For the first time since I had discovered them,
I saw fear flash in her eyes. Jason looked confused, glancing between us, not understanding the connection. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence choke them, because now the strings of deception were finally tightening around their necks. Jason stammered, asking what I meant. Valerie's hands trembled as she set down her glass, and in that moment, I knew I had them both exactly where I wanted them. But the real twist, the one that would tear them apart even before my revenge truly landed, was still hidden. Because as I dug into Valerie's past, I had uncovered something neither of them knew. And that truth was going to break them both. Jason thought Valerie was just his mistress. Valerie thought she was avenging her mother. But the secret I had uncovered was far darker, and it would leave them both in tears, because the two of them were connected in a way that would destroy everything.
There are moments in life when silence is no longer enough. Moments when truth must be spoken, no matter how much it scorches the room. That evening, as Jason sat across from me, his hands still resting nervously near Valerie's, I decided it was time. Time to end the lies. Time to deliver the truth that would shatter them both. I turned my gaze on Valerie, steady and unblinking. Your mother, Caroline? She did not just betray me, Valerie. She betrayed Jason too. And you, whether you knew it or not, have been walking directly into the same trap she once set. Jason frowned, confusion etched on his face. What are you talking about, Anita? I leaned forward, my voice cold, sharp, cutting the air like glass. I am talking about the fact that Valerie is not just some woman you are sleeping with. Jason, Valerie is blood. She is your blood. The room went still. Jason's face drained of color. Valerie's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. Years ago, before Jason and I had even married, he had a reckless affair. I knew of it, but I never knew the details. He had told me it was meaningless, long forgotten. But what I discovered in my search was that Caroline, my once best friend, had been the woman in that affair. And Valerie, her daughter, was Jason's daughter too. Jason had been sleeping with his own child. I let the words hang heavy in the air, watching as they both crumbled under the weight of it. Jason stumbled backwards, his hands trembling as if he had touched fire. Valerie gasped, covering her mouth, her face pale with horror. You are lying, Jason whispered, his voice cracking. But I was not lying. I had the proof. DNA results from records I had quietly obtained, tucked safely into the folder I had prepared. I slid the papers across the table toward him. His eyes scanned the page, and with each line, his body seemed to collapse further into the chair. Valerie broke down first, sobbing uncontrollably. Her tears were messy, guttural, the kind that tore from the soul. Jason followed, his face buried in his hands, his entire body shaking. The mighty man who had once strutted around with pride was reduced to nothing but a broken, weeping shell. And I sat there, calm, almost serene, because this was the justice I had waited for. Not just revenge for myself, but retribution for every ounce of betrayal, every whisper, every cruel smirk Valerie had thrown my way. They thought they were untouchable. They thought their affair was nothing but passion and control. But now they knew the truth. They had been living in a nightmare of their own making. Jason begged. He dropped to his knees in front of me, tears streaming down his face. Anita, please forgive me. I did not know. I swear to God, I did not know. But forgiveness was no longer mine to give. Some sins stain too deeply to be washed away with tears. Valerie couldn't even look at him. She screamed at Jason, cursed him, clawed at her own skin as though she could erase the memory of every touch. She left the house that night, stumbling into the darkness, her cries echoing into the night air. Jason followed her, broken and desperate, but he was too late, because by then, I had already set everything in motion. In the weeks that followed, I made sure my revenge echoed louder than their betrayal ever did. I presented the evidence to Jason's company, his financial transfers to Valerie exposed as fraud and misconduct. He lost his job, his reputation shredded, our joint accounts, carefully restructured by me before the storm, were safe in my name alone. Valerie disappeared from Massachusetts, her name now tainted, her ambition shattered. Jason, stripped of everything, begged me daily for a chance to rebuild, but I gave him nothing. Instead, I rebuilt myself. I filed for divorce, and with every paper I signed, I felt lighter, stronger. I returned to the woman I had once been, before Jason, before Caroline, before betrayal. A woman who no longer begged to be loved, but one who knew her worth. On the day the divorce was finalized, Jason stood outside the courthouse, tears in his eyes. "He lost everything, Anita," he whispered. And I looked him dead in the eyes and replied, "No, Jason, you threw everything away." Then I walked away, the autumn wind in Massachusetts wrapping around me like a cloak. For the first time in years, I felt free. Betrayal cuts deep, but sometimes the truth cuts even deeper. Jason and Valerie thought they had destroyed me, but in reality, they destroyed themselves. My revenge did not come from cruelty. It came from truth, from patience, and from the strength I never knew I had. To anyone listening right now, remember this. You are stronger than betrayal, stronger than lies, and when the world thinks you're broken, that is when you rise. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If this touched your heart, if it made you feel something, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe forgiveness was possible in a situation like this? Or was revenge the only path? Do not forget to like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more powerful stories. Your support is the heartbeat of this channel.